Hello, everybody, and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. And as we march on with Correspondence Week, we should march on with the Saints, should we, James? Like my segue?
That's
like my
awesome.
segue?
No, shit, mate. the one you did the other day was really good, but no, that was shit. It's our song anyway. No, everybody knows that Spurs never stole that song from Southampton. Everybody knows that. We are joined today by Ali at FPL_Gather, our Southampton correspondent. How are you, mate?
Good afternoon. Very well, man. Thank you very much, both of you.
Yeah,
Very
good
welcome,
stuff.
Mate.
A good end to the season. I mean, pretty much after that horrific night against Leicester, it just got...
Don't mention the Leicester game.
No, but it was a turning point.
They hate it.
It was a turning point, and at that point, to then come out and have the rest of the season that you did, you've got to be happy and actually really optimistic going into the next season with Hassan Hootel now.
Yeah, for sure. He looks really solid in his position now. I mean, yeah, that battering, you kind of want to put it behind you, but like you said, it was a steep learning curve for the players, and ever since then, we've really kicked on. And when I think about if we didn't lose, that badly, would we have been struggling a lot more towards the end of the season? Would we have just sort of coasted like we had in the previous seasons before that? So, it's every cloud has a silver lining, and kind of a blessing in disguise that actually it might have given us the kick up the butt that we needed.
It gave you more than a kick up the butt, I think, mate. I think you just completely restructured, re-energized in terms of, I find you the last few months of the season, and actually particularly during the restart period, I found you one of the most enjoyable teams to watch, because from the off, you were one of the few teams that decided you weren't going to sit behind the ball and actually go and press the thing without it. And I find that really admirable for a side who, with respect, is considered by most, generally speaking, as a bottom half side. I mean, after that game, we all thought you were fucked, mate, and we're going to go down or change manager or whatever. So the recovery is remarkable.
Yeah, and we attacked with a bit of speed as well. Like, we pressed high, but also when we picked the ball up with our defenders, we actually looked to go forward, which was something that I hadn't seen from a Saints team in really 3 or 4 years, So it was quite nice to actually see us on the offence quite a lot for high periods of games.
Yeah, probably since you had Pochettino. Don't worry, in 3 or 4 years from now, my team might be like that as well, mate.
Yeah, I was going to just echo what James said, especially the Manchester City game. And I know City had a lot of chances, but especially the first half, the intensity with which you pressed, I was watching it with, they can't do this for 90 minutes. They can't do this for 90 minutes. They can't do this for 90 minutes. But it was relentless effort, and work rate is the one thing that I value in my team more than anything else. I'm like, if nothing else, at least put a shift in. And that's what you've been seeing, led by Danny Ings up top. But even the guys around him, Armstrong, Redmond as well, they put a shift in. Yeah,
and I mean, the only game that I can really compare it to, where you said about surely they can't do it for 90 minutes, is the Atalanta PSG game, where Atalanta was pressing so high for an hour, maybe 70 minutes, and then they just lost the legs at the end. But yeah, Danny Ings led the line so well. And it's funny because he's not the quickest player in the world, but I think because he's quite a short fella, it looks like he's going lightning speed. On the TV, he's pressing people and, getting in their faces. And I think we just rattled Man City, and I don't think they really were expecting that. I think they were expecting us to just sit behind the ball and soak the pressure, try to nick them on the counter attack, which it probably did work out like that in the end. But really nice to see pressing high and just confident against those sorts of teams.
And
let's be fair though, that second half was grim, mate.
It was. I mean, they could have had they could have scored a lot of goals. It's City, right? At the end of the day, it's City. What do you expect?
You couldn't concede chances.
Of course. But it kind of sort of means, and James and I have spoken about this a little bit off air, it means we're going into the 2021 season with actually quite a few Southampton players that will be on people's radar. I've got 2 in my squad right now, in Ings and Armstrong. I don't think there's very few players at better value at their price points. I mean, you could argue Jimenez versus Ings maybe, but there's not much in that 5.5 million category. There's plenty of others that have got, McCarthy is obviously very highly owned at the moment. There's a number of assets there that are interesting now for us.
I've seen a number of drafts with 3 Southampton players, a number.
Mine being one of them at the moment. I mean, obviously Fraser Forster's back in the running now, but I don't think he'll be taking McCarthy's number 1 jersey just yet. I think he's got to do something I think he's got to have a big dip in form. And I don't just mean like a battering from one team. I think quite a big dip in form to lose his shirt, because he kept us in the Premier League the season before last with some amazing saves. One that stands out to me was one against Everton. I think we drew 1-1 in the end in something like the 96th, 97th minute, but he made a couple of amazing saves in the last 10 minutes, and I think kept us in the league. But my draft at the moment currently has McCarthy, Walker-Peters and Armstrong as well, because like you say, I don't think, you got St Maximin at 5.5 as well, but I don't think Newcastle attack in the same way that we did towards the end of last season. So I'll be sticking with Armstrong, I think at the moment. Yeah, and I was speaking to a few Southampton fans the other day. His price it worries me that he'd have to have a season like last season to justify that. I feel with only with Martial and Timo Werner, not much more, but where the premium midfielders are so in demand, it's difficult to stretch the budget to the 9.5. So people's premium striker is essentially now a mid-budget striker in Ings or Jimenez.
You got Danny Ings, Serge?
Yes.
Me too.
You say he has to replicate last season, but for Jimenez will score 17, 18 goals consistently, and we think his consistency means he's okay value at 8.5 million. So I don't think, for me, Danny Ings doesn't need to score another 22 goals. I think I'd be happy with 17 or 18. I think he could score 4 or 5 goals less and still be okay at 8.5 million. 17 goals, 18 goals would be okay. The difference being, James seems to think that it's going to be 2 up top and Che Adams is going to be up there with him. It may even pick up a few more assists if he's got a strike partner as well, which he didn't have. Although he likes to have a shot, as Danny Ings. When he's got sight on goal, he'll have a go. But maybe there's going to be a few more assists in there, maybe a few fewer goals.
Yeah, I quite like the fact that he likes to shoot on sight. It just shows the confidence that the guy's carrying at the moment. But I agree. I do think Che Adams will start up top as well, because he was quite a big signing for us last season and just didn't start very well. But I think he'll, if he can start how he finished last season, I think he'll be really difficult to drop. And because he looks like a real athlete. Like, he's quite a muscular lad, and he'll be able to bully quite a few defenders off the ball. And then Danny Ings with his, he's a bit more clinical, a bit more in the right place at the right time, I feel. So I'm hoping they can bounce off each other quite well. And it might, I hope that formation will bring out the best in Redmond, because for my sins, ever since I started, and ever since you guys started, with the correspondence, and I've been singing Nathan Redmond's praise for all that time, and he looks really good, but he's just not a fantasy Premier League asset yet, unfortunately.
There's plenty in that bracket in there, James. Good player, bad FPL asset.
Yeah,
I love him. He's a brilliant little player.
Yeah, he looks great on the ball. He's got lots of flair, and he gets into good positions, but he just doesn't get us the points, unfortunately.
There are a number of Saints assets you can look at here, from McCarthy, Walker-Peters, Armstrong, Ings, Adams. They feel like the main guys, and yet the player that I think is arguably the most important in that team is not the FPL asset. It's Redmond. Just never equates to FPL returns. I love him as a footballer. I really, really rate him. I think one of the reasons he never gets mentioned for the England squad, for example, is A, the lack of goal scoring returns, and B, it's obviously a very competitive position at the moment. But I think there's other periods, like if you go back sort of 5-6 years, he'd have been a regular in the England team. He presses, he dribbles well, everything is right until it comes to putting the ball in the net, basically. And remarkably, his price, I don't even think he's bad at 6.5 million personally, but I just wouldn't go there, because I'd look at Armstrong at $1 million cheaper and go, that's the way to go. Like, if Danny Ings wasn't in the game, I'm almost certain I'd start with Armstrong, and there's a good chance I will anyway. I think of all the teams at the moment, I'm probably more likely to start with 3 Southampton players than any other, because I can quite conceivably see Ings, Armstrong plus McCarthy, for example. I can definitely see myself taking that route, and the fixtures haven't put me off either. It's a decent start, mate.
Yeah, it's funny because 12 months ago from now, or maybe 13 because of the lockdown and the Premier League being pushed back, you'd never dream of starting with 3 Saints assets, would you? So it's a really exciting time for me as a supporter, and just the club in general, that we are not just tempting fantasy Premier League bosses, but, you know, on the football pitch, actually delivering clean sheets and scoring goals. Like, that's really, really promising. But yeah, like you say, I do think 6.5 million for Redmond is slightly overpriced because he just doesn't give those returns. But one thing he does do for us as a team is he gets us up the field. He makes us look really positive in transition from defence to attack. And like you, I love him as a player, but will be staying away at the start of the FPL season.
Do you remember going back a couple of years, Serge, we was in this same sort of position one pre-season? Do you remember what happened?
With Saints assets, do you mean?
Yeah. James
Ward-Prowse?
Well, no, just generally speaking, we were like, there was amazing assets, and within about 3 minutes, we were like, forget them for the rest of the season. Trolls, honestly. Yeah. But I feel like with the uplift of last season, I just don't foresee that coming. I mean, looking even at some of the numbers from restart, I mean, take Danny Ings, for example. 7 goals and assists in the 9 games since restart. You can't at that point then say, if he can maintain that 8.5 million is not an amazing price, right? And I just think my personal opinion on this at the moment is his ceiling is big. I love Che Adams. I think
do you know what you just reminded me of there, James? You're talking about Danny Ings from restart. It was 7 goals and an assist. And the first thing that came to mind is 7 goals and an assist and possibly the crappiest penalty I've seen forever, because it was the game week where I moved from Jimenez to Ings, and I was like, this looks like a good move here because it was a gamble to do it, and I just have a memory of that awful penalty, but it could have been even more, right? It was a bad penalty, but yeah,
58 FPL points in 9 games, played all the minutes basically, bar 4, I think. So all this, you know, Danny Ings, glass legs, and all that stuff, it's over, isn't it? He's in the England squad now. He's important. He's pivotal. I think that the fact that he's got a regular partner now is so beneficial for him. So I think he's very underestimated in the positioning that he picks up, in the sense that a lot of people think Danny Ings, and they think, in and around the box or going in behind. Actually, he likes to drop deep quite a lot. I spoke about this 3-4 months ago about potentially being a concern. But actually, it's to his benefit because he's finding space better.
Yeah.
And look at some of the goals he's scored, like the goal against Burnley from the edge of the area, similar goal against Bournemouth from the edge of the area. Loves that wrap shot. Norwich as well in the league. So he's scoring goals from distance as well. You wouldn't call them 25-yarders top corner, but he's happy to strike from outside the box. He's not just a poacher. And I genuinely think he is capable of... I would be surprised if he scored 22 goals again or whatever he got, 21. But I think he's very capable of ending up in the high teens and being comfortably the talisman for you again. I think you got about 80 more FPL points than any other of your players. It's massive.
I think that will happen even more if Che Adams becomes a regular feature, that Danny Ings will be dropping deeper to collect the ball, especially, you know, with Redmond and Armstrong running, making those runs as well, getting forward. If we are playing that attacking, aggressive football, then there's no reason why he can't be, you know, popping these shots off from out the box. And like you say, I can't recall him ever banging one into the top corner, but you know, those sorts of Kevin De Bruyne shots that are going into the bottom corners, definitely from outside the box. He's got a really low centre of gravity as well, and he turns with the ball well, and he's throwing a lot of the defenders off course with his movement.
In the same period from restart, Armstrong, 2 goals, 3 assists, 40 FPL points, 5.5 million now. Almost can't argue with it at that price. No. I just think the only concern for me is I'm not sure I want both. That's almost the biggest thing in my mind right now. I'm not sure I want both. How do you feel about that? I mean, you're saying at the moment you're probably edging to not going with Ings by the sounds of it. So what's the thinking behind going with Armstrong instead?
Every year I do like a new player that's joined the Premier League, and I really like the look of Timo Werner, and I like him even more than I've liked new signings in the past, because he's had more time to settle into the Chelsea squad and sometimes managers like to rest players, you know, or ease them into the Premier League or whatever. But you know, he's had a couple of months now at training with Chelsea, and he's head and shoulders above Tammy Abraham and Olivier Giroud. So I think I'll be going for Timo Werner at 9.5, and I'm also happy to go with him at that price because it means I can easily drop to Ings if I need to. But I think that at 5.5 million, Armstrong could offer amazing value. And another reason I'm going for Armstrong is he's not highly owned at all. I think he's owned by under 3%. You might be able to correct me if I'm wrong.
That time of recording.
Yeah. Under 3% of the total game so far. I know there's only about 1.6 million managers at the moment. Well, there'll be a lot more to come, but if that percentage holds, then he could be a real asset. And then you'll see players scrambling to try and get Armstrong into their team, which, like you, they might not want to do if they've got Ings. But I feel like Werner to Ings is a nice transfer if Chelsea don't start as I anticipate them to. But I think they're going to be title contenders, and that's quite a bold shout really early on, I know, but they've made some good signings in the right areas that have proved it in some of the toughest stages in the world. So
listen, they could get Messi. If they don't buy a goalkeeper, it won't matter, mate. Interestingly, I was just looking at James Ward-Prowse. His ownership at the moment, despite being 0.5 million more, is slightly higher than Armstrong's. And I think it falls down quite simply to the fact that
free kicks.
Well, there's that, but it's probably more, he scored more FPL points than Armstrong last year. So if you're not looking into the detail, you look at it and go, well, Ward-Prowse got about 20 more points than Armstrong. I'll pay the extra 0.5 plus the profile of just being called up into the England squad again as well. But Ward-Prowse played every single minute last year. Armstrong only played basically half. And he's only finished about 20 FPL points behind him. Armstrong's got 5 goals, 4 assists in 1,700 minutes. Ward-Prowse the same in double the minutes.
Yeah, no brainer in it really. When you're looking at points per minute, Armstrong is definitely the way to go. But yeah, Ward-Prowse has always got that appeal of he's on spot kicks, he's on free kicks, and he's on corners as well. So he will pick up assists throughout the season, but I think if Armstrong is a confirmed starter, like I genuinely believe he is, then Armstrong is the way to go, 100%.
Ward-Prowse got chucked in at right back a little bit from time to time as well, didn't he? But with Walker-Peters, you wouldn't think that he'd be a makeshift wing back or anything like that now.
And when was it Walker-Peters got a hat-trick of assists?
It was against Bournemouth a couple of days after Christmas 2018.
Yeah, because I just transferred him out of my team, and I know
good lad.
You get that all the time. But like, I started the season with him following pre-season, and I kept him in, and then I had to remove him because he wasn't doing anything. And then suddenly,
was that the same game that you had about 40 points on the bench when Dean went mental at Burnley and all that?
No, it was around that period, and that was just like the decline of not only my FPL season but just my life in general. Like, it just felt like every transfer I was making was going horribly wrong, and I just couldn't.
We should make a podcast about that. We already did. Anyone that wants to rewind to last season's pre-season podcast where we talked about it, but we're not here to bring back.
What do you think about it, Mally, Carl?
He looks really good. I mean, I like the look of Valerie as an attacking fullback option as well, but he seems to have the starting position nailed at right back, and he gets forward really well. It looks confident on the ball. That was a mixture of comfortable and confident, that word there. I'm not quite sure what happened. He looks confident on the ball, and if we're playing that aggressive and attacking football, and like you say, you've got Ward-Prowse that can fill in at those positions if needed, cover as wing backs as they push forward. He could be a real option. The only other defensive option that I'm thinking, apart from McCarthy, is our new centre back Salisu. I hope I haven't really butchered his name there, but
we've done it on every pod so far, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, I'd like to see what he's got to offer. If he's going to be a threat from corners, because he's the same price as Walker-Peters. But I want to start with Walker-Peters for now, and I would like to see the centre back pairing of Stevens and Salisu moving forward. Which obviously means that Vestergaard misses out, who's not really a fantasy asset, but just for the club in general, really.
Just on Salisu's, a 21-year-old Ghanaian bought from Valladolid. He's 6'3", 1 goal for Valladolid last year. Now, I can't profess to have ever seen him play. I haven't, so I won't say further on it. But just a basic look at those numbers would not suggest that there's potential. There's not likely to be many attacking returns anyway. It's interesting. I actually spoke on one of the podcasts we did recently, Ali, about the fact that in spite of Ward-Prowse's delivery being so good, probably don't score as many goals from set pieces as you should. It always feels like if you get one, invariably Stevens is involved.
Yeah.
That's how it feels.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, Stevens has been a good threat from corners recently, in last season and the season prior. But yeah, like you say, Watd-Prowse, he's got a wicked delivery on him from corners and stuff. But any goals that do come from corners do seem to come from Stevens, and he doesn't get many. So yeah,
he's also 5 million, which I think with the two 4.5 million assets that you speak of, Walker-Peters and McCarthy in goal, then I just don't see why you'd go that way. Salisu is one to watch, in my opinion, as a potential alternative. I don't think he's come in to be anything other than first choice. I think it's an area that you needed fixing badly, in my opinion. I think Stevens and Bednarek have done all right, but definitely an area of the squad that need improving. You've done that, which is good. Yeah. Basically, as it stands, Ali, around about a quarter of the game have a Southampton defensive asset, be it McCarthy or Walker-Peters or something else. So most of us look like we're going to put our trust in you here.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested to see how many have got a double up as well, similar to myself.
There'll be a few.
McCarthy and Walker-Peters. I think Walker-Peters is the way to go because you remember Cedric in the Premier League, who was getting quite a few assists in a Premier League season. But yeah, we've strengthened at centre half now, which is good because, I mean, Vestergaard, when he had to come in, was just terrible. I think Bednarek was okay. Stevens, when he wasn't suspended, was decent enough. But we've strengthened where we need to strengthen. So I'm hoping that McCarthy will pick up a couple more clean sheets this season. And yeah, I'm feeling quite positive going into the new season, which I can't say I have felt for a couple of years now.
Would you consider Southampton double defensive, Suj?
Nope.
No, me neither. I think that's a little bit too much faith in you. I
think we approach it from
I'd rather
Trent
too
and
offensive.
Robbo and Doherty. Yeah,
maybe,
I'm going
that's
double
true.
offensive, and because we're so heavy at the back with Liverpool and Wolves, and even Eric Dyer looks more interesting for me. I'd rather go Kieran Tierney. So it's the defenders. I don't mind McCarthy. I own McCarthy for good periods of last season. And I don't mind it at all, but I wouldn't double up on the defence unless you're really looking to save money and looking for 4.5s. But that's not my approach. At the moment, strangely, I feel like I'm big at the back, big up front, and like a donut hole in the middle. I've got £5 and £6 million midfielders, bar one or two, and that's where Armstrong's perfect. I mean, a return every other game.
That having the two double defensive, if we're saying a quarter of the game's going for one, is an amazing little differential, isn't it? I mean, if you hit it, wow, brilliant. If you had to go with one, McCarthy or Walker-Peters, I take it you'd be leaning towards Cole Walker-Peters at the moment, would you, Ali, if you had to go one?
I think so, just for those attacking returns, yeah. I want to see what our centre-back pairing is like, and I want to see how solid we are in defence. But one thing that our wing-backs have done over the years is provide the odd assist. So
that's the iPad gone.
I think it's his phone. I'll slice it. Are you thinking of no Danny Ings and James? Or are you thinking Danny Ings?
For myself, yeah, I'd be very surprised if I don't start with Danny Ings. I just think
what I find interesting is now I might end up with Armstrong and Ings in both games, Sky FF and FPL.
Possibly. Then the great prices, the four prices available between the two games, they're all great. I don't think I want both for Sky. I think it'd probably be a one or the other choice.
Yeah, I'll probably end up with Armstrong, I think, because of the money saving. And I can go and get somebody else at a similar price in Sky. But
I strongly think at the moment that Ings, looking at the numbers, is probably worth paying the extra. You look at talking about him getting nearly 200 FPL points last year. If he gets to, I don't know, 80% of that again, he's going to be brilliant value at 8.5 million. It's absolutely fine. So I think I'd go with him as the most likely. I think what Ali's saying there is interesting, is the idea of he's talking about Armstrong, Walker-Peters, McCarthy are all potentially great assets. He's blocking himself potentially from getting Danny Ings. I mean, that's not a position you want to be with. And that's probably the number one thing for myself as well, like for thinking, if I want to think about three, and it's very conceivable, as I said, to go like McCarthy, Armstrong and Ings. and then suddenly it breaks out in the start of the season, and Che Adams is proving to be brilliant value alongside Danny Ings, then I'm not sure I necessarily want to be restricted to be able to go straight in and make that move. If suddenly I think, wow, Southampton have got a great home fixture this weekend, I'll go with the 3 offensive players, which wouldn't be a long-term move, don't get me wrong, but as a short-term could be absolutely fine. The central midfielders don't get many returns. We've spoken about Redmond. He's always underperformance from an FPL perspective. And I wouldn't personally have as much trust in them defensively, because I think they're open and they're brave, and that kind of makes me not want to invest in them defensively. Personally, I would favour McCarthy over Walker-Peters. Walker-Peters basically played 7 of the 9 games from restart onwards. And it's worth saying he only really kind of locked down his first team place during this period. But I'd also look at them as well and think, right, if they are going to rotate, if you think of Højbjerg's left, Romeo and Ward-Prowse as essential to Armstrong, Redmond offensively. He's probably going to rotate who plays with Ings. That's another thing that would potentially put you off Adams a bit. But I think Adams certainly gets favouritism at the moment. He's not going to rotate Ryan Bertrand at left back. So if he wants to freshen up that area, I would see it being Walker-Peters the one getting the rest.
Yep. Interesting.
He's never had a spell in his career where he's regularly played 2-3 times a week. And during this season, we've got lots of periods where he's going to have to play 3 times in 6-7 days. So if it's short term, I think it's fine. If it's a longer term move, then my thinking would be I would go McCarthy, personally.
Just for the security and safety of not having Walker-Peters rotated and what have you. And you talk about rotation elsewhere as well. I really like Obafemi as well. I just think he's a very direct footballer. I think he's stocky, strong, and very direct. And I like players that are like that. I think playing regularly, I don't see why he wouldn't. I mean, if he was in the Championship, for example, I think Obafemi would be a 20-goal a season player.
He's young, right? He's got time. I mean, him and Adams have both got time to develop. He's a powerful player, isn't he?
He's strong. What are your thoughts on Obafemi, Addy?
Yeah, we spoke about Obafemi on the last podcast, actually. I feel like he could be a real a good asset off the bench, but I feel like while Che Adams is performing, I don't feel like he's going to be a starter just yet. But I'd like to see him coming off the bench towards the start of the season and potentially featuring more at the end.
Uses pace when teams are tired, that kind of thing.
He's another one as well, though. Should anything happen to, say, Adams, then you think he's definitely got favouritism over Long now. 5 million up front could actually be really interesting, actually. So, he's not the sort of player you should discount. I'm very conscious, like I said, of not blocking myself with 3 Southampton assets, because I think I might make the wrong decision at the start. But they probably interest me in terms of a treble up more than anybody else. I think there's six good assets there, probably.
Yeah, there are. And, I mean, Shane Long has been crucial to Saints for so many years, and his work rate is completely there. Like Suj said earlier, that's the one thing that, he looks for in his players, even if the results aren't going well. His work rate is there. But he just doesn't provide enough goals for a striker for me. But it looks like with Ings on form, if Che Adams can continue form from the end of the season, with Obafemi as well, I'm not sure where Shane Long really fits into the setup, to be honest.
Che Adams is worth saying. I was just looking at forwards priced at 6 million or lower, and this data will exclude your Mitrovic's and like the promoted players. But only Dwight Gale from his price range and owner as an under from a forward scored more points during the restart period. He scored 39 FPL points during that period, Che Adams, in 381 minutes. Like, he's big. I think if Danny Ings wasn't about, I'd start with this kid,
Yep.
But I'm convinced that Danny Ings will prove, even though it's 2.5 million difference, I'm convinced he'll prove that he's worth it.
And the other thing that I'm interested in your opinion on, Ali, is to kind of what a good season for Southampton is, but also off the back of the second half of last season, what do you think the Saints need to do now to put themselves in the same bracket as, say, Wolves or Sheffield United or these guys that have been sniffing around the top 6? Is it literally a case of stop conceding goals, just get better defensively because the attacking options are there?
Yeah, I feel like the attacking options are definitely there. I mean, you know, we were in fighting for Europe a few years ago. We were in Europe a few years ago, well, a bit longer than a few years ago now. But I'd like to be back, you know, challenging for top half next season, and then be looking to build on that, because I feel like we've made, you know, a couple of good signing and Walker-Peters, Salisu, Che Adams last year when he comes good. So we're building in the right areas that we've needed to strengthen in, which is a real positive. So I'd like to see us finishing comfortably top half next season, and then build from there. I feel like for me, top half would be a good result.
I think if the front six, and I include Romeo and Ward-Prowse in that as potentially the midfield choice at the moment, although there's a bit of pressure coming on from Reed and Smallbone, the young kids behind. But I think if that six stays fit for the majority of the season, I think they'll finish top half.
Yep, I would agree.
I think we're all in agreement. Southampton are top half of the table, seasons ahead. And if Danny Ings bangs in another 20 goals, I'll be happy with all my returns from him.
I'll tell you what I can say from a Spurs perspective as well. I won't look forward to playing them. Genuinely, because they work hard, they're in your face, they don't stop. The cup games we had, I mean, they beat us on New Year's Day and we were awful, and then we had the cup games in the fourth round of the cup, and Ali, I tell you, I mean, the fuck knows how we beat them in the replay.
I remember, after the games, you were...
they should have. I mean, they were 2-1 up, and the only question sitting there in the ground at the time was, is Southampton going to win this 3 or 4-1? They're all over us. So that we got a great equaliser from Lucas and got a penalty and won the game. But I mean, they should have gone through.
Yeah,
they're a good side.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I don't think teams are going to look forward to playing this next season, and I'm quite excited to see what we can offer in the cups as well. But most importantly, just solidifying our place as a club in the Premier League, looking to build rather than just sort of defend our spot in the league, really.
There's 2 teams outside the so-called Big Six I would be happy not to play. Yourselves and Wolves, I'd be happy to avoid those 2 games and just fucking play 34 games, honestly. I think, as I said, if the key players stay fit, I think finish top half, mate.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I hope that as well, actually.
This would be interesting to review this in 12 months, I think.
Hopefully no 9-0 batterings to talk about in the future.
Unless it's in game week 2. I wish you well, mate. Don't worry, we won't cross the halfway line 9 times, mate.
So for all the listeners that don't follow Ali, you can head over to Twitter. If you follow James on Planet FPL Pod, we do have a list of all our correspondents. Is yours still FPL_Gaffer?
It is, mate. Yeah.
Indeed, good. Sometimes the foot stuff and that gets in there.
What's your handle on YouTube as well, Ali?
Just Gaffer27, and so I've just started making a little bit of FPL content, nothing too serious, but just while the lockdown's there. But I'll be going back to work next week, so it might have to take a slight backseat, but I'm hoping to keep up a video a week or something like that.
Good man,
good luck. If you're ever looking for any Southampton advice, FPL advice, make sure you're following Ali over there. And as we march on with Correspondence Week, James, onwards and upwards.
I would tell you who's next, but you'll only get upset. Leicester next.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Is it?
Yeah, that's it. So, as always, to all the listeners, make sure you subscribe wherever you're listening to the podcast. We still do have 10 or 12 of these still coming your way. And stay safe, most importantly. Ciao for now.
Thanks, Ali. Cue music, please, man, child.